Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Shall we start? Inshallah. Okay. Let's start with the illustration of the Holy Quran. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الرحمن علم القرآن خلق الإنسان علمه البيان الشمس والقمر بحسبان والنجم والشجر يسجدان والسماء رفعها ووضع الميزان ألا تطغوا في الميزان وأقيموا الوزن بالقسط ولا تخسروا الميزان والأرض وضعها للأنام فيها فاكهة والنخل ذات الأكمام والحب ذو العصف والريحان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. So inshallah we'll be doing hopefully the first 13 ayat of Surah Rahman, which is the 55th chapter of the Quran. So last time when we finished the 10 Madani Surah from chapter 57 till 66, I believe. So going backward from there was Surah Waqia, and before that there was Surah Rahman. So I was trying to find if there is some kind of connection between the two. So whether I need to do Surah Waqia, then Surah Rahman, then Surah Waqia. So when going through Dr. Israr Ahmad's tafsir, he was he gave a background of the composition of the Quran from the perspective of we call him, the names are Maulana Farahi and his student, or the one who continued his work, Amin Ahsan Islahi, who worked on the Nazmul Quran, on the composition of the Quran in his tafsir, the Burul Quran. So he categorized the surahs in different groups, in each group having Makki and Madani surahs together. And he also came across surahs which had a connection among each other, like mirror images. So he considered Surah Rahman and Surah Waqia in a state of like a mirror image. And I'll just show you how that is in a while. So this surah, which is a Makkan surah, is a general view. But some people who believe that it is a Madani surah, uh, such as Abdullah ibn Abbas, Ikrimah and Qatada, believe it's a Madani. And so this is the where I say that how Dr. Israr and the Mufassir that he has mentioned have considered Surah Rahman, Surah Waqia as a mirror image. If you see on the right, Surah Rahman, he mentions that it starts with the blessings of the blessings that are given to man, and from these blessings, if you see in Surah Waqia, it ends with the blessing given to man, the mention of water, and so there is in the beginning, Surah Rahman mentions blessing, but Surah Waqia it's in the end. Then in Surah Rahman talks about the people of Jahannam, whereas Surah Waqia, the second last topic is about people of the left side, Ashabul Shimal. And the third topic that goes in Surah Rahman is Jannatan, the two paradises, and what's inside it. Whereas Surah Waqia, the second theme is about Mukarrabun and the people of right. Again, mentioning two types of people as compared to the two Jannatan on this side. And the last in Surah Rahman is the blessings of paradise, whereas in Surah Waqia starts with the blessings of Mukarrabun and people of the right, Ashabul Yameen. So I mentioned that some surahs have these kind of themes or mirror images, and Surah Rahman, Surah Waqia had this. So I thought of going with the Surah Rahman first, and then we can discuss Surah Waqia and see how they are also complementary to each other in terms of composition. So regarding the theme of the surah, so this surah is in which both humans and jinns are addressed directly. Since jinns also have freedom of will and action, so and they are believers and non-believers, there are good and bad as well among them. So they are addressed in this, that you also have to obey and follow these things, and these rewards are for you as well. So Quran is a message for both, but since man is the Khalifa, vicegerent on earth, among them only have the messengers of God who have been raised, and through their tongues only the divine books have been revealed. And there's a concept that was mentioned as well by Dr. Srar, that there are surahs which the groups of surahs in which Surah Rahman, Surah Waqia is the last part of those group. Those groups usually have the anzar in it, more like warnings, and if you don't do it, what's going to happen to you, kind of a theme. And whereas he said that this Surah Rahman, Surah Waqia has more of a tabshir, whereas this Bashara, there is, glad tidings, kind of an image on it as well. Because it does not mention previous nations, it does not mention the destruction of them, it doesn't mention previous prophets, whereas more of blessings of the Jannat and these things are mentioned as a Rahma. So there's another interesting point that was raised by Dr. Sar while mentioning the tafsir of Surah Rahman in the beginning, as a as a prelude, was that there's a book by Shah Waliullah known as Fawzul Kabir, and he mentioned there are two types of tazkir or reminders, if I'm translating it correct, that is bil ayam, the days of destruction of nations. So in sometimes Allah mentions that how he destroyed other nations, how he destroyed people who did not accept the message of the Rasul, right? So in these two surahs there is no such thing like that. But when it comes to tazkir bil ala illa, okay, so ala same in this Surah Rahman, we have fabi ayyi ala rabbikuma tukaziman, right? So this ala is he saying these are in'am or blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and those blessings can be of two types he's mentioning. One is qudrat, one is like nature, what Allah has given us. He has given us sun and the moon and the stars, and he's given us eyes and all of these things, right? So all these great grandeur things that God has given us, these things which are so great and so good, they increase in our hearts about the azmat of Allah Ta'ala, about the greatness of Allah Ta'ala. And with azmat, with greatness comes our humility, and we prostrate to him, right? So that azmat demands that we lower ourselves to Allah Ta'ala, we humble ourselves, right? So the other aspect of this Allah, of this inam of blessings, is Allah is mentioning as those blessings which are linked to His Rabubiyat, as being a Rabb. Meaning, when we discuss about Rabb, someone who has brought us to life, who is nurturing us, who is growing us, who's protecting us. So he is mentioning that I have given you these names as for your nourishment, for your guidance, for your I've given you a book. I've given you Rasul. So all of these blessings that Allah mentions, which are good for us and for as a Rabb He has given us, those increase in our hearts shukr. Okay, so Allah, which are the inam, if they are about nature, kudrat, quality, they increase the greatness of Allah in our hearts, and they help us be more humble and prostrate to Him, to bow in front of Him. Whereas if they are towards rububiyat, something that has been helping us and guiding us and doing so much for us, that increases shukr in our hearts. So this surah is one of the surah in which these are a lot mentioned, and in a very concise and beautiful way. Okay, there is a symmetry into it, and so beautifully mentioned. Surah Rahman is that concise one. Whereas he also mentioned that another chapter which is the longest chapter about these Allah, was Surah Nahl. So we haven't done that, so we don't know what is in it at the moment. But inshallah, when we'll do it, we'll keep this in mind as well. So a bit of introduction to Surah Rahman. So Abu Isa at-Tirmidhi recorded that Jabir said, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam went to his companions and recited Surah Rahman from the beginning to the end for them. But they did not say anything. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, I recited it to the jinns on the night of the jinns, and their response was better than yours. Whenever I recited Allah's statement, then which of your blessings of your Lord will you both deny? فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. They said, لا بشيء من نعمك ربنا نكذب. None of your favors do we deny, our Lord. All praise is due to you. Falakal hamd. Though this hadith is regarded as gharib by Tirmidhi, similar hadith is mentioned in Tabari. Abdullah ibn Umar said, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam recited Surah Rahmaan, or it was recited before him, and he said, "Ma liya asma'u al-jinna ahsana jawaban li rabbaha minkum." Why do I hear the jinn giving a better response to their Lord than you? They said, "Why is that, O Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam?" He said, ما أتيت على قول الله تعالى فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان إلا قالت الجن لا بشيء من نعم ربنا نكذب. Whenever I recited the statement of Allah, the exalted, then which of the which of the blessings of your Lord will you both deny? The jinn responded by saying, none of the favors of your Lord do we deny. So there is a response to the ayat. Sometimes they are mentioned in hadith, in tafsir when we read, and there are some mentioned in the last juz as well. I don't particularly remember, and there's something probably I do not practice, and I think we should look into those as well. That how we connect and respond to the ayat as well. This is one of the example. So now talking about, just a minute. So the first ayat is Ar-Rahman. So the first four ayat of Surah Rahman, if we go into it, Ar-Rahman, Allama al-Quran, Khalaqa al-Insan, Allamahu al-Bayan. So these four are, very beautifully mentioned by Dr. Asrar as well, that these four ayat are mentioning. So if you look at the first one, Ar-Rahman, okay, it is just the name, right? If you want to complete a sentence, it would be Ar-Rahman, Allama al-Quran, the Rahman who has taught the Quran, right? But keeping Ar-Rahman separate in the first ayat, it is also pointing out towards one, a quality of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Rahm, his mercy, and his mercy at a very peak, high potential, high potency kind of way. So he's a Rahman, and this Rahm has two names. Allah has from this same Rahm, the Rahim as well, which we say Bismillah Rahman Rahim. So Allah has mentioned His most beautiful quality of mercy in this first ayat. The second ayat mentions the ilm of that Allah has taught us, which is the highest of the ilms, which is the ilm of Quran. So Allama al-Quran. So the most high, the most merciful mentions that I've taught you the most, precious knowledge, that is the Quran. And then when it comes to the khalq, the what he has created, he mentions the most peak of his creation is insan. So then the most high Rahman mentions the most high ilm, Quran, and his creation, the most high insan that he's created. And then he says the most highest quality of, or you can say the feature of this insan that he has given is he has taught him bayan, speech, eloquence. Okay, so why mentioning speech or eloquence? Okay, Allah has given us eyes and they are very beneficial to us. He has given us ears and they are very beneficial to us as well, right? And thought and all these things. The thing is that if you see eyes, for instance, Allah has given other creatures eyes that can see even further than us. For instance, the eagles can see from the sky all their prey from at the bottom, or some don't have eyes but still can sense the temperature and all these things and can still see better. In dark oceans, they can see, for instance. So, or speed, other animals are faster than us. Skin, other have far more stronger skin than us. So strength, some have more greater strength than us. But this bayan is something that it distinguishes man from others as well in a high quality of feature as well. And Dr. Star mentions in Sheikh Hamza Yusuf mentioned that human is also called as hewan and natak. So hewan means animal, natak means that articulating. So if we are all animals, for instance, then we are the one that speak among all of them. So no animal can actually speak or communicate in that sense. Languages and eloquence. Dr. Asar also pointed out something that more towards biological and people who are towards humanitarian, that in the brain he mentions that, for instance, the forehead is the one where decisions are made. The site is at the back, occipital lobe at the back, whereas the speech center is the biggest center, which is at the top of the brain. And he said even in that there are two types of different centers in which when somebody speaks to you and you comprehend, you understand, And then when you have to speak to others, then you can give eloquence as well. So there are two different elements as well to that. So these four ayat are, mentioning those four highest of the attributes of each category. Allah, of course, is the creator, and his most highest feature, or his most highest quality, Raham, and Rahman is the highest of that. The ilm that he has taught us, the Quran being the highest, the creations he has created, the insan being his being his topmost creation, and the feature that he's given insan, bayan is the highest. And Dr. Asrar goes further on and says, like, arithmetically, if you in you have ratio proportions, and you say that if A is good is like A is going to B, then C is going to do something like that. So we mentioned that if insan uses his bayan, okay, for learning and teaching Quran, then he gets more even closer to Rahman. So he connected those in that terms as well. And that's, if you remember, when we have in our posters as well, khairukum man ta'allama al-Quran wa 'allamahu, the best among you are those who teach Quran and learn it. So those things then come together as well in that sense. So moving on from here, the fifth ayat is Ash-shamsu wal qamaru bi husban. The sun and the moon move by precise calculations. Okay. In other places in the Quran, it mentions it is not for the sun to overtake the moon, nor does the night outstrip the day. They all float, each in an orbit. So this is, 1400 years ago, when I'm not sure whether there was orbits or any circulation or these things discovered, but these were mentioned at that time. And then in another chapter, it mentions he is the cleaver of the daybreak. He has appointed the night for resting and the sun and the moon for calculating. Such is the measuring of the Almighty for all knowing. So these again are the some of the niyama that he is mentioning, that we who have created you, given you Quran, given you Bayan, has also created for you Shams and Qamar, sun and the moon, for precise calculations. Now that insan can use these as tools to gain benefit from it, but also calculate his days and nights accordingly as well. One najmu was shajaru yasjudan, and the stars and the trees prostrate. Okay. And another chapter, it mentions, see you not that whoever is in the heavens and whoever is on the earth, and the sun and the moon and the stars and the mountains and the trees and moving creatures and many of mankind prostrate themselves to Allah. Okay, this prostration, bowing yourself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, accepting your humility and Allah's greatness, he's saying that everything in the heaven and the earth is already doing it. Okay, so Ali bin Abi Talha reported that Ibn Abbas said, An-Najm refers to the plants that lay on the ground. Okay. Ibn Jarir commented, however, that the trees mentioned here are those that stand on trunks. So Ibn Jarir did not believe that An-Najm it means the stars. He had a different opinion. And he's mentioned, whereas the trees are definitely those that stand on trunks that are, enrooted on the ground. And I was just thinking about, what's the difference if we just keep the stars and the trees as the trees, but seeing that the contrary thing, where the Jarir says that the trees are those that are grounded, and anajam are things which are not grounded but which are uplifting from the ground, which are not enrooted into the ground but are just laying over top of it. It reminded me in my in my laboratory experiments in cell culture, when we have those suspensions and those cells which are suspended, or those cells which are attached to the surfaces. So some cells, they need to be attached to grow, and some can be suspended and can still survive. And I was thinking that anything which is attached to something or not attached, is floating around, is still prostrating to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's not just you have to be on the ground, you're prostrating. Anything that is, attached to something or not attached to something, the stars, for instance, the highest form of those, you can say, would be still are prostrating to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So nothing is exempted from prostrating to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is one of an understanding that I get from this as well. Ayat number 7 then says, وَالسَّمَاءَ وَرَفَعَهَا وَوَضَعَ الْمِيزَانَ. As for the sky, he raised it high and set the balance of justice. So he set the mizan, meaning justice, as he said in another ayat, لقد أرسلنا رسلنا بالبينات وأنزلنا معهم الكتاب والميزان ليقوم الناس بالقسط. Indeed, we have sent our messengers with clear proofs and sent down with them the book and the balance that mankind may keep up equity. So this was again chapter Surah Hadid that we did. That the purpose of sending the Rasul, sending the Rasul and sending bayinat, clear proofs, which would, eliminate any doubts from people's minds. Those clear proofs were given and sent down kitab, a book with balance. So that the purpose of doing all of this for humankind was to create justice, on earth among themselves. Okay. Allah tatghaw fil mizan, so they do not, so that you do not transgress within the balance. So that you do not transgress. So anyone who doesn't transgresses that balance, that's where the Rasul were sent to, to guide them back to be on the right path. So if you remember, in Surah Baqarah, sorry, in the last juz as well, where it says halataka hadithul Musa, is nadahu rabbuhu bil wadil muqaddas tuwa. So Allah sends that, the Pharaoh has done tagha. Okay. So the Pharaoh has done tagha, and that tagha is the same as tatghaw, where taga is where you exceed the boundaries. Okay. And that same word, when, in the sea, when the waves come out of the shore, is called tughyan, tughyani. In Urdu we say tughyani, I think it must be Arabic as well. Tughyan is something that with the waves come out of the shores as well. So do not come out of your, mizan, the balance that has been created. And that's the purpose of the whole system that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving through his Rasul, his signs, his kitab, and this balance. Meaning, he created, sorry, he created the heavens and the earth in justice. So telling man that how well you have been created as well. If you start with Rahmaan is such a just, the Quran is such a symmetrical and such, sounding fair justice built book. Insan is created in best proportion as well, right? And his eloquence is a symptom, sign of that as well. And the whole heavens and earth have been created in best form, and it says in the Quran as well. If you see any mistakes in the heaven and the earth, then tell us, right? So everything is perfect, perfect balance in justice, in the truth. So everything is based on that. So you, oh man, also follow a just system. And ayat number 9 that mentions waqimul wazna bil qisti wala tukhsirul mizan, and establish weight in justice and do not make deficient the balance. Okay. So again, establish weight in justice, do not make deficient the balance, meaning do not cheat in the weights and measures, but rather observe justice and fairness. Another ayat it mentions, and weigh wazinu bil qistasi til mustaqim, and weigh with the true and straight balance. And in one of the tafsir it mentioned that, in Qurtabi it mentioned that some said that aqimu, qiyam. So it's more like a practical by hand you have to do. And kist is something that is in the heart, that you do, you set up the balance with your hand, you make sure it is done, and in your heart you have the fairness, that you want to create that fairness in the society, and in your dealings as well. And we know that the people of, I think, Shoaib, who the Madian people, who did not, who were only destroyed because they were deficient in their mizan. They used to, do this kind of, misdealings, take full money from people, give them less, and all these things, and they were destroyed because of this attribute of them. And if we see around ourselves, how many of us are doing that? The people, and there are many videos that come up in Facebook as well, where people are selling fruits and then they're doing this, all these, mishaps. Um, so may Allah protect us from that as well. I mean, then ayat number 10, wal arda wada'aha lil anam, and he laid out the earth for the creatures. So it says that Allah raised the heavens and put down or laid the earth and balanced it with firm mountains so that it would be stable for its residents that live on it. The way that is the various types and kinds of creatures, different in speeches, shape, color, and language. Ibn Abbas, Jahid, Qatada, and Ibn Zayd said that Al-Anam means the creatures. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala creating this man, giving him this guidance, giving him all these features, giving stars and earth, stars, sun and the moon for calculations, and then giving all these blessings. And the earth he has laid down for him to, to rest on it, to walk on it, and he has made this earth in such a way that is now accommodating that man in living. There are rivers flowing. He gets the water from trees and vegetations for him to eat, to sustain, to make sure he completes his journey on this earth. Somebody, I was listening to a scholar, and he mentioned that uh, if Allah would have just killed us in this earth, there would be no test then, right? So, in order for insan to be tested till the end, Allah has to give him sustenance so he can survive till the end. In lab experiments, in the rat experiment, like Zoeb also does, right? We make sure we feed him well, right, so that he can complete his experiment till the end. We don't want it to die before his time, whether before the experiment is finished. So Allah has created all this earth for us to sustain in it as well. فيها فاكهة والنخل ذات الأكمام. In it are fruit, palm trees with date stalks. Now, mentioning the blessings was just enough, but Allah is going now further more detail of, of talking about sun and the moon and the stars, and coming down to the very grass root levels, that even the plants with the small grasses, don't think they are small. They are great signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, So, and there's whole science, if you just go in the scientists and how they mention how it's developed now on the cellular level and the genetic level and all these things. Allah, there's a whole deep science universe in itself, and science for those who see and think. So Allah mentioned the date tree here specifically because of its benefit, both fresh and dry. Ibn Jurayz reported that Ibn Abbas said, Al-Akmam means sheath fruit stalks. Similar was said by more than one of the scholars of Tafsir. It refers to the stalks that the seeds grow in to become a cluster of dates, unripe green dates. Then they ripen and ripen more. So I think where cluster of fruits come all together, one stalk with a lot of fruits growing in. Some of them are not completely ripened, then some ripen up and then they dry out. So these kind of all blessings are there as well as Allah has given man. Wal habbuzul asfi war rayhan, and grain with husks and scented plants. So al asf means straw. Al-Awfi reported from Ibn Abbas, asf is green leaves cut from the stem, so it is called asf when it dries out. And ar-Rayhan, Ibn Abbas, Mujahid, and others said the Rayhan means leaves, while Al-Hasan said that it means sweet scented plants. The meanings here, and Allah knows best, are the various crops that produce straw, such as wheat and barley, and Rayhan are the leaves that grow on the stems. And in the last ayat that we're going to do today, فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ, then which of your Lord's favors will you humans and jinn, رَبِّكُمَا, it mentions two, both you both deny. So which of your Lord's favor will you both deny? Meaning the favors that are obvious to you, while you are surrounded by them, you cannot deny or reject them. So all these favors that are mentioned, they are what Dr. Shah mentioned, hissi, meaning you can sense them, you can see them, you can feel them, you are growing on them, you're living with them. So meaning the favors that are obvious to you, while you are surrounded by them, you cannot deny or reject them. So we say, just as the believers among the jinn said, "Oh Allah, none of your favors do we deny. All praise is due to you." Ibn Abbas used to say, "Nay, our Lord," meaning none of your favors do we deny. La bishay'im min ni'ami rabbana nukadzib. So this is what we will respond to as well. So I'll end it over here, and just giving a bit of another, going back to where I started with Surah Rahman and Surah Waqia. There was another comparison that Dr. Srar did, and that was Surah Rahman with the surah before it, Surah Qamar. And he said there's a contrast in it, a similarity type of contrast, not a mirror one, where we see that Surah Rahman starts with the Quran, right? Ar-Rahman allama al-Quran, right? Whereas Surah Qamar, it is mentioning about again that same hissi or more of a senses based miracle. Okay, the Quran he's mentioning is more of a meaning, manvi mojza, meaning it's a meaning in it, has the mojza, the form, understanding it gives you the miracle in it. Whereas the more sensual, where you can see the miracle in Surah Qamar is the Shakul Qamar, the splitting of the moon. So it has that element in it, and in that way Surah Rahman is a contrast to it. And yep, subhanahu wa ta'ala. So inshallah, I will stop here, and yep, inshallah. Jazakallah khair. If there is any questions or any comments, Brother Nadir, from your end.
Yeah, Jazakallah for that. Rahman is
Mm.
like we have started very well comparison. And there's a link between Surah Baqarah and Surah Rahman
Mm.
very strongly. Just like to add one thing that is
Mm.
balance.
Mm.
Uh, it has about the balance. Brother Subhanallah mentioned. So balance is very important for our life. So like keeping a balance in our all of our affairs. Like for example, some people, I mean, accept the things in such a way that they go towards the Rahbaniyat and something like that. They totally forget their worldly affairs. And some people are like are involved so much in their worldly affairs that like they like forget to keep a balance of their like others, similarly between family and friends, and from similarly. So that a balance is very important for our life, and we'll have to keep in a very well manner in all, like for example the mizan, we'll have to uh, make ourselves accountable for everything. For example, if we are doing a job and someone is paying, our employer is paying for us for that specific time, and we should being a Muslim, it's our responsibility to give full of our efforts during that time. So that is also a sort of the balance. So really some people, I mean we used to waste time and just prolong things and just to pay more something. So we should in every field, like keeping if it is between dunya and the deen, and if it is between family and the relatives, if it between your own siblings and your family. So there should be a balance, like that this balance is so much important in the whole universe. But when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talk us, I mean, give us the invitation to think about how sun and earth is balanced, and this is so accurate that if there is a distance of a few kilometers more or less, so this all system would have been collapsed. Like similarly, moon and earth is this is so well balanced things. So God is by inviting us to see those things. God is in other words, he's he's saying us to have similar balances in your life.
Mm.
So
Well,
that
that's a very good point,
yeah,
that everything around you is in balance.
is in
If it
balance.
wasn't, the stars and moon would collide together.
Yes.
The vegetation won't be fruitful anymore.
Yes.
So if everything is balanced by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you should also create that balance. And by recognizing these blessings upon you,
Yeah.
then you should be thankful to Him and create that balance that He's asking you to do.
Asking you to use that.
So
Yeah.
subhanahu wa ta'ala,
Yeah.
mashallah, jazakallah khair. So Abu, anything from
Sure,
here?
sure,
Yeah.
sure, 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 sure.
Brother Zuhair.
Jazakallah khairan, Asrar bhai, for the wonderful lesson. I just wanted to say that, as you mentioned, like I completely agree with Brother Nadir's comments over here about, the balance and, not forgetting, like keeping a balance between worldly affairs and also your deen. So that's a very important, I think, thing to, keep in mind. I think apart from that, how the imagery of the surahs also is so important. So, in the Quran, it's the skies are mentioned, the stars are mentioned, the sun is mentioned, the moon is mentioned, then palm trees are mentioned. So it's basically also for me, it's like being observant is very, very important, and this is one thing, and this is a concept of mindfulness as well, that, when you are basically taking observation of things, that is meant to also soothe you and relax you as well. So that is something I'm deriving over here as a lesson, is to be, more mindful, more observant of all the things that Allah has created, because that actually then makes you think, that actually proves how great Allah is. And basically then, boils down to, the humbleness and the gratitude aspect, as you mentioned in the book. So I think that's quite important. I also find it quite fascinating about the mirror images that you had shown, and it just goes on to show, like, as some people might try to claim that, oh, someone was making it up or something like that, but the fact that there is symmetry in the book is in itself a testament to the fact that, it is the God's word. So I think these are some key lessons that I took from today. Yeah, thank you.
Jazakallah,
Jazakallah
thank you so
khairan.
much. I really like your perspective on how Quran takes your mind from a macro vision to a micro thing as well. That you keep your mind flexible and see all of these things together. Jazakallah khair. Brother Najib, anything from your side?
Jazakallah khairan. Professor, very well done. Like very, Zohaib, I found Dr. Asrar's understanding of the word Allah very interesting, creating awe and gratitude in us, and also is tafsir of the first 4 verses of the surah. Thank you very much for sharing them with us.
Yeah.
Jazakallah khairan.
Thank you. Sister Amira?
Assalamu alaikum. Jazakallah khair, Asrar. It was very amazing. Man is like one of my best, really, really amazing. I think every time you have like you are struggling in something in your life, or having something that is worrying you, and you read it, it's like a soothing effect, as Brother Zuhaib was saying, like mindfulness, and it makes you grounded and reminds you with everything around you, and then you feel like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not leaving you, and he provided you with all these blessings, so why you can like even think or deny that he might leave you in whatever you're going through it. So it's really amazing. Yeah,
It's very interesting point that you just said, that if you are focused on one thing that he hasn't given you, you're denying all the things that he's given you.
Yeah.
exactly.
Subhanallah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that as well. Jazakallah khair. Sister Farida?
Jazakallah khair. Yeah, this is also one of my favorite surahs, and I like the fact that it is like the macro sort of thing to micro. That kind of, it's more like a zooming in thing. So the biggest thing down to the little, like you said, the little piece of grass is so important, but we also automatically forget about it. And the fact, and I really like the analogy of your tissue culture. The cells being, whether they're adherent or suspension, they're still growing, but in different forms, and they're part of the whole wide universe. So we have to remember Allah's blessings all around, sort of thing. So it's good to come back and be grounded. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Jazakallah
Jazakallah
khair.
khair.
Jazakallah. Brother Ibrahim?
Assalamu alaikum. MashaAllah. Jazakallah khair is a really illustrative and colorful, MashaAllah, tafsir. You've covered some really good minute details. And MashaAllah, even the Arabic things. Like I know, for example, as next to Sheikh Sha'ai, MashaAllah, talk about the description of the Najm and how you have plants with stalks and without stalks. Like MashaAllah, you managed to do this really well, MashaAllah, without getting involved in the nitty gritty of the Arabic and the poetry. Because it's kind of good to kind of have a holistic picture without getting you could say, lost in the details.
Yeah.
And mashallah, I mean, we read this surah, when you think about it, I know it's a favorite surah for a lot of people, especially with the whole, obviously from a rhythm point of view and tajweed. It's interesting how we kind of read it from a ritualistic point of view. And the first ayat, as you said, of this surah, look at, well, what are we doing in our institutions in our countries to establish justice? And it kind of raises this on a regular basis. Like it's actually, a practical thing that we need to do, whether you're running a masjid or running a country, So Jazakallah khair, it's a good reminder for all of us. And I really appreciate it. It was a pleasure listening to it.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much. Yes, I wanted to actually go in detail into the word of kist, because as you see that it's something coming up, that's what is required of us after having the Rasul and the Kitab and all these things. Kist is what is required for us, for instance. And I remember once I got into a place where somebody mentioned how qist is not equal to equality or justice, but it's like equity, something like that, and is how it is more justice based than just dividing a piece of bread among two different weight people. Is considering their weight and how much they need, and then giving them accordingly, something like that. And I wanted to get into that detail, but Qurtubi didn't mention much detail about the qist. But I think in future, if I can get more reference on that, that would be very nice. But Jazakallah khair, thank you so much for that insight. Brother Hassan, Muhammad Hassan.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, brother.
Came a little bit late, but Jazakallah khair for the explanation. I'm looking forward to the rest of the surah, inshallah.
Inshallah, Jazakallah khair, brother. We are looking forward to you as well.
Inshallah. Jazakallah.
Okay, assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much, brother, everyone, for joining. Inshallah, see you next week. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum. I finish with Surah Asr. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wal Asr. Innal insana lafi khusr. إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. By time, verily, man is in loss, except those who believe and do righteous deeds, and those who remind each other of the truth and remind each other of patience. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Wa alaikum salam.
Welcome, sir.